Hey everyone, I'm Fred Ranger and I hope you're doing good. Welcome back to the channel. Today I have a very special camera that I've been able to test over the past few days, and I want to share my initial thoughts and kind of hands-on impressions about the Leica M11. As you know, I've been a big fan of the Leica system, especially the M6 on the film side, but with the price of film rising up, this is a camera that's not getting as much use as I would like to. The Leica Q2 is my favorite option for daily carry, but when it comes to shooting the true rangefinder experience on the digital side, so the closest thing to the M6, the M8, 9, 10, 11 is probably your best option if you want to keep the same type of vibes and feel of the film days, but into a digital format. As a matter of fact, of course, it accepts the same lens that these cameras have been accepting since the early days on the M series with these type of lens. I mean, the first couple Leica cameras had a screw type of system, but then they had the M mount, and it's been the same for so many years. So the Leica M11, a couple things that are different than my M10 that I used to shoot not that long ago, that are making a huge world of difference. I didn't think that it would be that much of a different experience, but in terms of the little things that they've added, I think it makes a huge difference. Does it make a $6,000 difference between an M10 and an M11? I'll let you be the judge of that. But for me, if you don't have an M series and you want to invest in one, I would strongly recommend looking into this option because of these little facts that are not necessarily big, but that are making a world of difference on a day-to-day use. So the first one is the USB charger. So they've added that. So in the Leica M10 and the previous versions, there was no way to charge your camera or to transfer files directly from the camera or directly on the camera. So you would think that this is, a small addition for a camera, because pretty much all the other cameras have a port where you can charge and actually transfer photos. But this is the first M camera to have that charger built into the body. So makes a huge difference. It also enables you to connect directly to your phone and to the Leica app. So if you want a faster transfer versus relying on Wi-Fi, this is now also possible with this body. The second thing that is a bit different than the M10 and the previous version is the battery. So not only the battery lasts longer, so the battery life is excellent on this. I've been able to shoot 2 days without even charging it. And if I had to charge it, don't even have to take the charger that comes with it, because now, as I said, you can charge it directly here. But not only is it a better battery life, but the way it actually opens up is the same as the Leica Q2. So it does pop up like that as the initial, little lever that you're turning, but then you do this and then you can charge your battery or access your SD card that is right here with the battery. So you just put it back. Very, very clever. They have the same system on the Q2 and I love it. And they have it on the SL system. So I think they're moving to having all of their cameras using that system, and I think it's a very clever one. It is not the same battery though as the Q2 or the SL, so you have to keep that in mind. It is its own size and type of battery, but it is as good, if not better, than what I've seen in the Leica Q2. Speaking of the battery compartment and where the SD card is, that's the SD card you can put in it, but there's also, you should know, a 64 gigabyte card within the Leica M11. So it's built into the body. So if you forget your cards, who forgets their cards here? Yeah, sometimes I forget my cards. And if you want to get shooting, or if you want to have extra capacity, so having a card plus that internal memory, that's a very, very handy feature. As you can imagine, if you're on a shoot and you're like, oh man, I don't have my cards, you can still shoot, so that's a big plus. If you're on a shoot and you have a camera that doesn't have that feature, well, you are screwed. And I think all the cameras should, moving forward, have internal storage, 64, 128, depending on the the camera. So the other thing that I thought was very, very clever about this camera is the way the menu actually operates. So Leica is known for having very simple menu, and this is the same tradition here. So you've got a touchscreen on this camera, so it's very responsive, and it reminds me of my Q2, and I guess it's the same on the SL, but very easy to see what you're changing. The one thing that they've added in this camera is the way you can meter light. So no longer are you afraid to blow your highlights, because you know that Leica sensors are known to blow the highlights. And this camera, I'm happy to report, has tremendous dynamic range, and I wouldn't be so scared to, you know, play with the highlights. But you can actually measure now with this new weighting mode, which is called highlight weighted. And now it will make sure that none of your highlights are clipped. And of course, these cameras enables you to drag that shadow slider and recuperate all of this shadow detail. So I've been testing it in various situations in the streets of Montreal, and I've been very impressed by both the way I can recuperate the highlights, but also the shadows. And if I want, can use the highlight weighted type of measurement, so I never clip any of my highlight. They have it on the Ricoh GR3 system, and I thought that was very clever, so I'm happy to see it on this Leica body. The other thing that I think is very interesting about this camera is, of course, the sensor. This is a magnificent sensor. This is, you're not seeing it here because it is closed and it is protected, which is also something that I think all the cameras should have. But this sensor is a tri-resolution sensor. This is the first time in an M body that you're seeing that. Actually, it's the first time in any Leica camera, if I'm not mistaken, that you're seeing that. At the beginning, I thought it was a gimmick, but when I think about it, you don't have to always shoot 60 megapixel, but it's there, it's built in. You can have that super high res file if you want to print big files, but also if you want to crop and you're not exactly sure of the framing and you know what you're gonna see in front of you, then you can use the 60 megapixel. If you're shooting an event or something like a birthday party and so on and so forth, you might not need all those megapixels. So you're gonna be shooting at 30 or 33, something like that. And then there's the 18 megapixel version if you wanna be, you know, trigger happy and not fill up your hard drives or your cards. So I thought that was very, very clever. But what I'm most excited about this camera compared to the M10 and the M9 and before, it's the actual image quality. I'm gonna show some examples on the screen of me walking in Montreal and taking some images, and you're gonna see that the quality and the depth of the colors that this sensor renders, it's incredible. It's literally one of the best, if not the best sensor. The Q2 is not that far, but you're stuck with that 28, you know, mil focal length. Here you can put your 35. I mainly use the 35 Sumilux FLE on this body so far, but you can use your 50, 75, 28. This is a Voigtlander lens. So you have the best, I think, sensor that Leica produces in this day and age. I don't know who produces it for them. Maybe it's Sony, but they did add their color science. And yes, I said color science, so you can hate me in the comments, but I still believe that Fuji and Leica and Sony, they all have different color science. Their algorithms are different, the way they treat the reds and the greens and so on and so forth. And I was very pleased by I call the Leica files the most realistic. So if you're doing reportage or if you're doing like press photography and so on, I thought that this was the best representation of what my eyes were seeing. As much as I love the Fujifilm files and the Canon files, I always thought that those were oversaturated versus something like what I'm getting from this sensor. The Leica M10 versus the M11, I thought the M10 was a bit more on the warm side. This one is a bit cooler, but again, nothing that cannot be fixed or adjusted in post. Of course, if you shoot DNG, very, very easily edited in Lightroom or Capture One. This produces very easy to work with. But what I find, is that usually I upload it to Lightroom and I look at the files and I'm like, wow, I'm like literally 5 minutes max on an image, and usually it's way less than that, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, because the sliders and the quality of the image is already there. The sliders are just to make it pop a little bit or to desaturate or whatever I want to do. But at the end of the day, it has that quality of file. So I don't know how to describe it. I'll show some examples again. The depth of the color, the micro contrast, everything is to like. And this is what you would expect from a camera of that price. couple downsides that I've identified with the M11. The loading time, I think they've improved it with the latest firmware update, but it's not on par with the competition. It takes a long time. You can miss some shots, booting it up and then being able to shoot. That is something that they need to work on, and I'm pretty sure they can do it via the new processor that's in there and with firmware updates, but they still need to work on that front. The fact that it's not weather sealed, again, it's not, I wouldn't be too worried to shoot in light rain, but of course, because of the lenses and the fact that even if the body is weather sealed, I mean, you will get here maybe some water going in, so there's no way to weather seal an M system. So that's why I will prefer when I travel to bring something like that, where I don't care about what's happening in the terms of the weather outside. I can always bring the camera and keep shooting. But overall, I was very impressed with the M11. I'll put a little clip where I'm walking the streets of Montreal. You can, be the judge for yourself. Would I be spending 10 or 12 grand on Canadian on a camera like this? Maybe not now. I would actually wait maybe for the used market to come. It's been a year since it's out, so maybe next year or the year after, when they come up with the M12 or the M11P, whatever they come up with. I think it's a bit expensive, but it's not, when you're buying a Leica, you're not necessarily buying into performance or into specs. You're actually buying into a shooting experience, and this Leica M11 definitely offers you the closest thing to shooting film. And of course, it continues the tradition of M bodies and being very, very pure photography. You have to know what you're doing with your, shutter speed, your ISO. They even have a little button here you can assign to whatever you want, but it's the most simplest camera, and that's what I love about this series. If you have any questions about the M11, let me know down below. If you want to learn more about other cameras, gear I use to tell my stories in this day and age, Fuji, Leica, and others, please feel free to ask. And also I invite you to go see or hear my podcast, the Visual Storytelling Podcast. I'm actually releasing an interview with Stefan Kosman, which is a great individual, great creative mind, who's the founder of the Selma Photographic Nights, and he's also a OG photographer on the red carpet in France, in Cannes. So a very interesting conversation. So go see or hear, should I say, that podcast. It's a very interesting episode. On that note, I wish you to be happy, to enjoy life, and to enjoy your quite expensive Leica cameras. Cheers.